All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. Greg Olson, Optima Financial. Along with me, I have Craig Cheney, who you'll hear from in just a moment from Seaway Marketing. I'm not going to do a big intro. What are we here for today? You guys saw the invitation, the newsletter that went out that was titled "Learn About One of the Greatest Client Acquisition Tools to Hit the Marketplace." A lot of you that we've talked to over the course of the 4 or 5 years that I've been with Optima, everyone's always asked me, is there anything out there that help me get in front of more clients, prospect? We are constantly being solicited by different vendors and saying, hey, take a look at this software, look at this lead program. If there was that one magic bullet, everybody would be using it. I'm not here today to tell you that this is it. This is something, what Craig's going to share with you today was brought to us actually by one of our producers, one of our top producers, who said, hey, you need to take a look at this. And he told Craig, hey, Craig, you need to go look at Optima. They're an organization I've been working with for a long time. They do things the right way. And what this software he's going to show you today, again, like I said, it may not be for everybody, but this is definitely a way that's going to help some of you producers get in front of more clients. So what I like about it personally is I've seen a lot of different software systems out there. This is extremely clean. It's easy to use. It's easy to do the inputs, and it puts out a very nice, concise output for you to give to the consumer. And that when we're evaluating different software programs, that's really what we're looking for. So without further ado, Craig, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you kind of do your thing and walk us through why you guys developed what you did, and we'll go through a demo, and then, like I said, we'll take questions at the end. So go ahead, Craig.
Thank you so much, Greg, and thank you, everybody, for being on the call. On behalf of Seaway Marketing, we're very, very appreciative. What you're going to see and hear today, simply put, is truly a client acquisition like no other. This is, for better or worse, my 38th year in the business. I've looked for these kinds of things my whole career, and 6 months ago, tripped across it and was absolutely amazed, along with 47 people in the room who were alongside me. So you'll see that demo here in a few minutes, and what we're going to do is really talk about not only how that tool works, but how you can market to it. You're also going to learn, without any hyperbole, you're going to learn how to do life insurance sales with absolutely no competition or pushback from the client. You'll see why here shortly. You're also going to see how to do annuity sales with absolutely no DOL interference. We've solved that problem in a really big way, and we're also going to talk about, excuse me, how you can work with 401k plan sponsors and business owners. And by the time you're done today, you're going to see how those plan sponsors will, out of a sense of panic, introduce you to their highly compensated employees. This is something I've done 6 times myself in the last 2 months. The results are amazing. And at the end, we hope you'll stick around the end, because there is going to be a bonus in it for you to get you started in this process. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk very briefly about what the issue is that we're trying to solve. I want to make it really clear. We're going to use the words Medicare and healthcare. You do not have to be, nor should you be, a Medicare healthcare expert. That's not where we're going with this. All you have to know is some of the basics, because I promise you, as you go out into the field, you're going to find that none of your clients have heard about what we're going to talk about today. So the title here is What You Don't Know About Retirement Will Hurt You, and it is true. In 2003, George W. Bush decided that if you made more money than the person next to you, you were going to pay more for your health care. And so the first question I would ask you today, and I want you to ask your clients and prospects, is, in retirement, is your income going to be derived, your cost of your health care going to be derived from your income or your health? I promise you they'll say health, and they're going to be wrong. It's going to be your income. In 2003, like I said, W decided that it would be, you would pay more for your Medicare, but the thresholds were so high, nobody even thought about it. It was millions of dollars a year. In 2014, then President Obama decided that that wasn't enough, and he decided that by 2020, 25% of all Medicare recipients will pay more, much more, for their health care in retirement. It's called means testing. It's real. It's live. And the reason you haven't heard about it is, honestly, since it's only been around since 14, some of these liabilities are just starting to accrue. What we know is there are 76 million baby boomers. You guys know this. You know that 10,000 people are retiring each day. But you take a look at that, the scope of the market. Look around you when you go out this afternoon. 1 in 4 people are going to be affected in a very, very big way with these higher healthcare costs. One thing I want to make a point of is not only is this the biggest cost that your clients and prospects are going to have in retirement, but it's entirely not being addressed by the financial advisory community today. And one thing we worry about is we've figured out how to work with the DOL on the product side, but we worry about your practices because, think about it, if you've ever had a conversation with a client about their retirement income and you have failed to or omitted the biggest cost in retirement, healthcare, is there any way possible you could have met the best interest care standard? And we worry about that a lot. We worry a lot about future litigation. The software package that you're going to see today would completely protect your practice. Okay, what else do we know? Healthcare costs are the number one thing your clients and prospects are worried about and want to talk about. I don't need to tell you about what's been going on, the debates and with Obamacare and all that. Healthcare is far and away the hot topic. It's also a great neutral ground to approach a prospect because, let's face it, folks, our business is pretty commoditized. If you call me up and tell me you're a financial advisor, I have a pretty good idea what you do and how you do it. What we need to do is be a little bit different. So know that your clients and prospects want to have this conversation. The rules have changed. Unbelievably, healthcare costs will be greater in retirement than housing and food combined. This is a chart that shows really what those costs are, but the healthcare costs are really quite large. Every person has a mandatory expense in retirement. We train advisors. The first thing we'd like you to share with a prospect or a client is, did you know you have a mandatory expense in retirement? And they're going to tell you no. And the fact is they do. What makes it mandatory, essentially, are two things. One was the Affordable Care Act. Yes, there have been some changes to that, but in general, you have to take Medicare in retirement. What oftentimes stuns our advisor clients is when we tell them, and it definitely stuns the client, is if you fail to take Medicare at age 65, you will forfeit past, present, and future all Social Security. Medicare is deducted from Social Security. So the failure that you can't just opt out of Medicare because you don't like the cost unless you're prepared to walk away from your Social Security check. And if you don't file for Medicare on time as soon as you're eligible, generally meaning when you are no longer covered by a qualified private plan, there are late fees assessed, and those late fees will follow you for the rest of your life. Why the numbers have gotten so big, not only is the Medicare, the income means testing, going to throw a huge monkey wrench in, I would argue, most financial retirement plans, but the numbers are big because of inflation. The 40-year history of Medicare, ever since President Johnson signed it into being in 1965, I think it was, the average rate of inflation is 7.89% per year. The projected rate over the next 4 or 5 years is 5.78%. So it's a truly, really big number. Now, for an average American couple, these are people, they're not having enough income to be means tested. A 60-year-old healthy couple wants to plan until age 85 will have nearly $500,000 in costs in retirement. Now, again, these costs are not being planned for in financial plans. We know that because none of the financial planning tools have healthcare cost in them. There is one company out there that does, but their data is 5 years old, which renders it essentially useless. So what we're talking about is a conversation that needs to be had with everybody. Somebody that's well-to-do, as you'll see in a few minutes, certainly. Somebody that's not so well-to-do, they need to know these costs are coming down the pike, and all of a sudden, all the products that you've been talking about with income and protection and so forth become very, very meaningful. Again, Medicare is means tested. The more one makes, the more one pays. It is not about your health or medical history. What is income in retirement for Medicare? Folks, it's everything. Everything you can think of. Your adjusted gross income, any tax-exempt interest, everything on lines 37 and 8B of your 1040. My favorite one, and so obviously we're talking stocks, bonds, interest, dividends, capital gains, and on. But how about you slip and fall at 65 in your home and you don't want to go into a nursing home, so you have to redo your bathroom and you put an elevator in the house, and that's $50,000, and you take it out of a HELOC, a home loan, that's taxable income too. This thing trips you up every which way. Here's some examples of income we just talked about: Social Security, wages, pension, rental, cap gains, dividends, yes, municipal bonds, certain annuities, 401ks, traditional IRAs, 403B, 457, SEP IRAs. You're going to find as we move through this process that the very act of owning a 401k may be the worst thing you can do, and that a Roth conversion might be the best thing you can do. Here's something you need. This is the only thing you really, really need to be acquainted with, and it's called IRMA, I-R-M-A-A. Feel free to Google it. I've had people tell me that I was absolutely full of it. They Google IRMA and they call back, oh my God, it's all over the internet, and it is. These are the current IRMA brackets from 2017. As you can see, an individual that has under 85 or over 85,000, or a couple with 170,000 of income, will pay right out of the gate 40% more for their health care, Medicare. They will also pay, if you get to the top level, 220% more for their health care, Medicare. Now, very important thing. These are the numbers as of 2017. The truth is that the number here on the bottom, the 214 and 428, have already been reduced to 160 and 320. How this game is played is the government, the Medicare Trust Board, will continue to bring these income brackets down over the next 7 years until they ensnare 25% of all recipients. And that's at present. We don't know that this isn't going to get worse, but this is what we know for sure. So this also for each of you is really good news, because it calls into play your annual review. Most of us go through the exercise of an annual review because we have to, and we've got to talk about what the performance was, blah, blah, blah. You have to have an annual review now, because as these IRMA brackets change, it's going to change the complexion of your client's future expenses. How dire is this? A 50-year-old couple retiring at age 66, if they've got standard costs with the inflation rate remaining constant through age 85, will pay $772,000 in costs. If they make $1 too much, those costs jump to $941,000, and at the maximum income level, it's $1.714 million. By the way, how many financial plans that have been done in America can withstand a $1.7 million hit that's unplanned for? That's just something to think about when you have your next first prospect meeting. Okay, these are the proposed brackets for 2018. You can see the 160 and 320 is now reflected on the bottom. The whispers that I am hearing are stunning, but the whispers are that the top bracket, or the first bracket there, is going to drop from 85 to 60,000, and possibly 90 to 100 on the couples end. Certainly no more than 120. So you're going to hear, you might not have heard about it so far, but you can't go a day anymore without reading something about this in the media. Kiplinger had a big article about it last week. Seeking Alpha had an article about it. It's going to make its way to your clients and prospects. So good time to kind of get on the train. Okay, we know that, as I said earlier, Social Security deducts all Part B premiums, Part D premiums, and all surcharges. Those IRMA surcharges will come out of your Social Security check. Now, this is important. How many of your clients and prospects are going to rely on their Social Security? Well, we know that 50% of Americans are going to rely on their Social for 70% or more of their income. So at 2.6% COLAs for the foreseeable future, with Medicare rising at about 7.86% per year, your clients and prospects' hopes for getting a Social Security COLA just went out the window. And if we continue to see the uptick in inflation that we're starting to see and interest rates trending higher, which is certainly causing turmoil in the markets, it's going to be a real tough time to be a retiree into the future. One thing we want to talk about, you see in the bottom, it says 0% in 2016, the Hold Harmless Act. Again, one important thing you need to know. If you are not in an IRMA bracket, you are held harmless by the government, meaning that while you will lose your COLA to inflation, higher Medicare costs will not come out of your Social Security check other than inflation. However, the minute you do $1 more and trigger an IRMA bracket, that Hold Harmless goes out the window and you will see your Social Security check erode over time. And we'll be demonstrating that here in a few minutes. So the rules have changed. 76 million people hurtling into retirement, and they are in trouble. In big trouble, as again, you'll see, they don't know it. The first person that gets to them wins. I have to deviate for just a second, tell you a story of our very first user. We call him Steve from Omaha. Steve in July, I think it was July 7th, came to us and asked us to run a report. He hadn't bought the software yet. We did it. His client had 1.2 million in qualified assets. He was age 54. Steve had to report to him that he had a future liability of 1.51 million. The prospect, this was the first meeting, freaked out, started swearing. And by the way, this is the way all these presentations will go. It's like telling somebody died. People who have meticulously planned their whole life are being hit with $1 million liability, and they go nuts. Well, he did. And he demanded to know what could be done about it. Steve said, well, we've got some ideas. You guys sign these forms. $1.2 million roll over in 20 minutes. Since July, Steve is today up to 12.5 million in new AUM, and there's not a day goes by he doesn't beg me to not tell anybody about it. He's going to be really unhappy about this call today. Okay, so what's not income? How can we fix this problem? First of all, health savings accounts, really good one, HSA. Secondly, I don't know how many of you are aware of 401h plans. 401h plans may be one of the better prospecting ideas I've ever seen. They're complicated, but think of them as a group health savings account. And the limits, the contribution limits are very, very high. The only problem is if I'm in a company with 5 other people and I choose to put $500,000 a year away in that account, everybody else has to also. So they lend themselves to small professional groups. Those of you who want to go call on docs, give Optima a call. They'll tell you how to get a hold of us, and we'll show you how to prospect to very, very high net worth professionals. Roth accounts, obviously Roth accounts, all money that comes out of Roth are tax-free, and that includes federal, state, social, and IRMA bracket inclusion. Home equity. Home equity is fine as long as it stays in the home. The minute it comes out, that changes the game, but your home equity does not affect IRMA bracket. Whole life insurance. I'm not really trying to be too funny here, but this is where you get a chance to tell the world that Dave Ramsey, Susie Norman, Ken Fisher are all full of it. Life insurance is one of the best solutions to solve high-cost healthcare costs in retirement. We'll go through and I'll give you, like I said, when we do the demo, you're going to see why. But when you do a whole life insurance policy, an IUL, let's say, for a 54-year-old, you will be the only person in your market that is doing this. And we're going to show you how to have a huge head start. Specific annuities. When we talk about specific annuities, we really talk about different forms of immediate annuities. Some of you are probably old enough to remember split fund annuities. Split fund annuities are a dynamic solution to IRMA bracket issues. We talked about life insurance. We're going to talk about life insurance a little bit more. So, bottom line, there are 8% of Americans that currently have done any planning and factored these costs in. The size and scope of the market is monstrous. And that we think, and our users are telling us actually that this has really reshaped their practice. We've had people tell us, I'll give you one other quick story. He actually was our second user, is in New York, and he had a doctor that saw this, went through the analysis of the software. Again, very angry and highly motivated. She demanded that he come to the hospital and speak to all the doctors as he had spoken to her. And let's just say he's pretty happy about how it turned out. So with that, let's move on to the demo. Okay, so I'm going to be frozen now. Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to add a client. We'll call him Craig. Not very scientific. And we're going to make him 54. And I really wish I was. Married. Email. There is a possibility I've been timed out, so we may have to do this again. Let's see. Yep, I thought that might happen. The program will time you out after 10 minutes if you haven't been on it, so we'll do the same thing. One of the things I will say, as somebody who's really not a software guy, I found this to be ridiculously easy to use. It took me about 10 minutes after I got my copy, and I was able to run pretty accurate illustrations. Okay. And the reason, by the way, we do this demo. I could have shown you the finished report, but I want you to see the whole process, because it's in the process that you begin to see some of the magic of what we're doing. So you notice that the report is locked out. You cannot get into the inputs for the report before you do this questionnaire. This is an incredibly important piece. What this questionnaire is an acknowledgement that you have given the client or prospect handouts, which, by the way, are in the marketing materials section. But if you don't know anything about this and forget everything I've told you today, you can go into the marketing materials section, print out the 6 PDFs, and just walk the prospect through it, and you will have given a very cogent presentation. But in this case, we want to acknowledge in print that you have given the client or prospect the materials. And the first question that's asked here is, did you know you have a mandatory cost in retirement? I'm going to go to the end. That being said, it's a topic I'd like to spend some time on. If the client says no, we would check the no tab, and it will generate a report that the individual will sign and you will sign it, and it will go into the file. That will protect you now and forever, that you intended to have a conversation on their biggest cost in retirement, and they absolutely turned it down. We have case history, legal cases where attorneys have come back to the advisor for failing to plan for their retirement. And in the case where they were our users, the users had the documentation in the file, and the lawsuit never moved forward. So this is a total CYA for everybody on this call. But in this case, the client's going to want to talk about it. And we're going to simply go down and we're going to complete all the tasks that we've acknowledged, that we've handed out all the forms and gone over them. And at the end, we're going to ask them again, now that we've covered this, do you want to see an illustration of how this might affect you? They're going to say yes. Again, if they say no, we're going to document it. There'll be a printout. So at this point, we save the questionnaire, and here's what the results look like. No, that's not. Okay, cancel. Download the results. Why is it doing it? Okay, sure. Okay, sorry about that. So now here we have the healthcare cost questionnaire, and you note that we've completed, we've acknowledged, and at the bottom, everybody signs. This conversation happened, okay? Now that we've completed this, we can go to run the report. We're married filing jointly. We're from the great state of Idaho. And now we go and begin. And what we're doing here is we're going to add all of the client's assets. So the first thing I always start with is Social Security. In the case, Craig is going to make $3,000 a month, going to begin benefits at 65 with a 2% COLA. If you don't know the client prospect social, it redirects you right to the Social Security site. You put in their current income, their expected retirement date, and you will get a very good number. Okay, we're also going to add in Teresa's social. She also gets $3,000 a month. She also is 65 and 2%. We have a 401k for Craig. And now, this is important, really important. The program deliberately does not calculate your future value. And the reason is if you tell the client or prospect, oh, I can get you 10%, and you don't do it, under the DOL, you're going to be paying the difference. So we want you to negotiate what you think that rate of return is. So I'm going to talk to Craig here. He's got $250,000 at age 54. And he's going to tell me, look, the market's been up forever. I think maybe 7%. I'm going to probably agree with that, and I'm going to document. So we know 250 with the Rule 72 will be a little north of 500,000 at retirement. And then once again, you're now retired. I'm going to ask you, we're going to get some bonds, we're getting some CDs. What rate of return do you think is reasonable? He's going to say, well, 5%. Okay. We're going to begin withdrawals at 65. Not being terribly technical here, we're going to use a 4% withdrawal rate. That gives us $20,000 of annual income, or about $1,600 a month. Okay. We're going to add an income product. Teresa also has one. And in her case, she has $150,000 today, which under the same rules is going to be $300,000 retirement. Rate of return's 5 in retirement. We have a brokerage account. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay, it's going to be $1,000 a month in retirement. And we have a brokerage account. And the brokerage account is a little different because we don't have RMDs. The program calculates all your RMDs. We don't have to worry about that in the brokerage account. So what we have to solve for is future withdrawal amounts. So we know that that brokerage account today has about $200,000 in it. It's going to be $400,000. We're going to use a $1,600 a month withdrawal rate in retirement. And finally, last asset, we have rental income. About $3,000 a month, West Coast, that's one house. So we've got $3,000, and that's it. We're now ready to prepare the report. Now, this is important. We know that you automatically get Part A. Part B is $134 on the base premium. We always illustrate Part D because you have to, and we always illustrate Medigap. Now, I'm not in the med supp business, never will be, and most of you aren't either. But if you are, more power to you. But the Medigap is necessary because if I go down this path of trying to protect my practice and you, and I leave you with a 20% gap in coverage, I might as well not have ever started it. So we always illustrate that. You have the ability over here to change the historical inflation rates. We get some pushback sometimes in this, but I don't know why you would. The reason being, if you say, no, I don't think it's going to be 7.86, I think it's going to be 3, and it turns out to be 7.86 or worse, again, you're going to pay for it down the road. So it's not worth messing with. Okay, we're going to view the report. Now, I have to tell you, this is the point where things get a little heated. I'm not embellishing here. What happens, the process is the client sees the report. It's like telling them somebody died. There's anger, and I've had a guy actually throw a book at me, believe it or not. Anger at the government, anger at somebody not telling them. Then there's denial. Trump will fix this. No, he won't. When was the last time the government gave you back money that they could successfully get from you? And then there's pleading. And this is what makes this the best client acquisition tool of all time, because we're seeing clients going, you got to help me. We've got to make this go away. And the reason they're going to say that is we're going to show them this number for the very first time. 1.46 million unplanned for liabilities. And when we put this report down in people, we instruct our advisors to just sit back and let it sink in. These are real numbers. Remember now, the client is 54 years of age, got 11 years to retirement, and then has 25 to 30 years in retirement. Those inflation costs kick in a really big way. Your target market, I would argue, is between the ages of 45 and 60. 45, you're going to know these people have a problem. And when you get over 60, your solutions get to be a little leaner. So we like the 45 to 60 market, but we can certainly help people over 60 as well. Believe it or not, I've not given you the bad news yet. The bad news comes right here. As we said, we have all Medicare is paid for out of Social Security. You notice this yellow bracket here? These clients have hit an IRMA bracket at the age of 71. Not too terribly extreme. By the way, this is just one Social Security check. You got to multiply these numbers by 2. But by crossing here, they went from $8,176 a year to $11,781 times 2. As we cascade down in life, we're now 83 years of age. In 1 year, we've gone from $26,000 a year in cost to 37 times 2. Our Social Security check is all but shredded, okay? Finally, it continues to decline as our costs go up. You notice here at age 90, it's minus 185. What that means is you have exhausted all $59,000 of your Social Security check times 2, and you have to write a check to the government for $185. And I'm sure you're going to love the punchline. This is where people absolutely lose it. They now have to pay taxes on the $59,000 that they did not get. At this point, you have a highly motivated prospect client. So what can we do? We're going to go and take a look at income by asset. I mentioned at the top that we can sell a lot of life insurance, and I mean a lot of life insurance. So the first thing I'm going to do with this particular person is I'm going to take a new look at the brokerage account. And there's a great product, by the way, that Optima offers through Allianz, an IUL product that I happened to use a year ago. I was stunned, but my client brought his statement in the other day. He was up 25% last year. So I don't feel really bad by blowing up a brokerage account and setting up the right kind of life policy. But remember here, we've got a $1.4 million liability, right? 1.46. So I'm going to blow up the brokerage account. Maybe I'm going to do a 10-pay IUL. I might do a single-pay IUL, depends how it illustrates. But I've gotten rid of the brokerage, and I've just saved the client $152,000 in future Medicare costs. Now, think about it. If you are illustrating, let's say, a 5% indexed return over the next 10 years, let's say, you just started with $152,000 head start over any competition in the country. Not only that, you pushed your internal rate of returns, imputed internal rate of returns, probably into the 6.5 range. But the clients are starting to breathe easier now. And that's why I said at the top of the show, you're not going to have pushback from clients about whole life. Whole life is being used as a very, very valuable weapon, okay? But we're not done yet. So we're going to go back. And we're going to do a Roth conversion. Now, remember, the client's 54. We got 11 years to retirement. And at 54, the client only had 250,000 in it. So we're not income averaging 500. We're income averaging 250 over 11 years. So we're going to get rid of that. Oops, I'm sorry. And we've now brought their liability down to 1.147 million. In that Roth, we know that our Social Security check is going to get hit. So in that Roth, I'm going to look for some kind of an annuity with an accretive income benefit that will grow over the next 11 years to offset my future Social Security hit. And when I write that annuity and FINRA and DOL come to me and say, why did you take money out of a 401k to buy an annuity? I'm going to say, because I saved my client $200,000 in future healthcare costs and saved their Social Security check. And I'm not going to have any problem at all. But you need the tool to be able to do the documentation. So we're going to go back now, and we're going to look at the Social Security check just by having done the Roth and the life insurance. And you notice we've now pushed the first IRMAA bracket out all the way to age 87. That's awesome. And we've really saved the bulk of the social check all the way to age 90. We're not going negative. But I'm not done yet, because in all cases like this, when we get to age 65, there's no reason to have the rental property anymore. So we're going to get rid of the rental property, put it into probably an immediate annuity, because we know it's IRMAA bracket tax-free. We're going to take a look at that social. We've eliminated IRMAA brackets out of these people's entire life and protected the bulk of their Social Security check. You are a hero in every sense of the word, but that's not even the beginning of the story. Let's go back and take a look here. We have $250,000 to invest out of the 401k. We've got $200,000 out of the brokerage account, and at 65, we've probably got $400,000 out of the house or the rental properties. Our users are telling us that they're usually doing 30 to 40,000 GDC per case. You can see if you run into this person, not hard to see at all. So that is exactly how the software works. And it's, like I said, and by the way, I want to reiterate, this is a best case scenario. Those numbers you just saw are going to get worse as those IRMAA brackets come down. When those IRMAA brackets come down, we will trigger our people's IRMAA brackets earlier, which means the numbers will be worse. You will be constantly planning with your people, with your clients and prospects. Steve and I were talking the other day, and he said something very interesting, which I believe because we found it to be true with our advisors. He said, Craig, because the planning is intricate, not hard, but intricate because the solutions are few. He said, I'm closer to these new clients than I have been with clients I've had for 5 or 10 years. He said, partly because I've solved a problem they didn't know existed, but partly because we've had to roll up our sleeves and spend a lot of time together. We're finding with our advisor clients that we hear from them 2-3 times a week. They want case planning questions or whatever, which we're thrilled to do. But the point being is it's not only a client acquisition tool, it is a client relationship tool as well. So yeah, it's another prospecting opportunity also. So I really appreciate that. So this is what the actual report looks like. It's a 4-pager, and you can see that we've taken all the assets out because we did that at the end. But this is the first page. What I do with this, or what I would do with this, I would circle this number in big red letters. This is what our users are doing. I draw a red line into this vacant box, and I would say, Travis, you need to call the office. We have a problem with your retirement plan, and we need to address it. And they're all telling me that, yeah, they're getting a lot of calls. That's not a problem. Right. So the first page goes to all the present costs. The second page is what you already saw, the income and cost breakdown by year. Then we move on to the third page, which is the impact on your Social Security check. And finally, all the disclaimer information. So we've condensed it. A year ago, this was a 12-page report. We've condensed it to 4. We want it to be simple. I want to reiterate, this is not complicated. I'm not a Medicare guy. I've never been a healthcare guy. This is, all you have to know is that IRMAA brackets exist, and they're going to destroy your Social Security, if not your retirement plan. And this simple 4-page report kicks it off. So, Greg, if you want me to cover anything else, I will, but back to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Greg.